And they're going to do that now.
Transhuman, make way for the Homo superior. You can't take the CRISPR. You can't take the CRISPR. Cast 9.
Wired.com. Yeah, the many flavors of transhumanism here. The headline: there's new proof CRISPR can edit genes inside human bodies. New proof.
New proof.
I thought they already knew that they can do this, but apparently...
Oh, we got proof.
We got proof now
we got new proof.
New proof. Says this: the CRISPR components can't naturally get into cells on their own, so Intellia, like the intelligentsia, the intelligence agency maybe, Intellia uses a delivery system. Did I skip something? No. Okay. It just starts like this. All right. Let me just start at the headline or subheadline. New proof CRISPR can edit genes inside human bodies. The technique had largely been limited to editing patients' cell in a lab. New research shows promise for treating disease more directly. The CRISPR components can't naturally get into cells on their own, so Intellia uses a delivery system called lipid nanoparticles, essentially tiny fat bubbles, to ferry them to the liver. In Intellia's trials, patients receive a one-time IV infusion of these CRISPR-laden nanoparticles into the veins in their arms. Since blood passes through the liver, lipid nanoparticles can easily travel there from the bloodstream. In the liver, the nanoparticles are taken up by cells called hepatocytes. I think I'm saying that right. Hepatocytes.
There is a crazy connection to this. I'm just realizing. So continue, please.
Once inside these cells, the nanoparticles break down and let CRISPR get to work, editing out the problematic genes. In both diseases, a genetic mutation allows an aberrant protein to run amok and cause damage. In hereditary angioedema, am I saying that right? Those are hard words. Angioedema. Intellia's CRISPR treatment is designed to knock out the KLKB1 gene in liver cells, which reduces the production of kallikrein protein. Too much kallikrein leads to the overproduction of another protein called bradykinin, which is responsible for recurring, debilitating, and potentially fatal swelling attacks. According to an Intellia press release, before receiving a CRISPR infusion, patients experience 1 to 7 swelling attacks per month. During a 16-week observation period, the CRISPR infusion reduced those attacks by an average of 91%. It gets into some more details here, but yeah.
Lipid nanoparticles, huh?
Yeah.
So that's what they're saying. They're saying, oh, we now we can change human DNA with CRISPR because of lipid nanoparticles.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting because we all did we all had quite the crash course education in lipid nanoparticles in the past couple of years, huh?
Yeah.
Huh. What an interesting connection.
I know what you're talking about, by the way. I'm not just playing along here. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Oh, he knows. He knows.
What we know is that when you edit a cell, it will stay edited for its life. There's no way to undo that. And then there's turnover. The question is, well, where do the new cells come from? In the case of the liver, it comes from other hepatocytes, or hepatocytes, says Leonard. We think once you've got it in the upstream cell from which everything else follows, it's forever. Which is a point that we've talked about with CRISPR since the beginning of tracking CRISPR, that once you edit the gene, there's no going back. It's like it's edited, forever edited.
Right. There's no undo.
There's no
button.
undo. Yeah. There's no control Z or whatever. Yeah. You know, who's this Leonard guy real quick, just to clarify for those listening. Where did it go? Sorry. I'm trying to find some stuff. Well,
it's okay.
Can't find it.
Just as an interesting update, we could save this for another thing, but I'll just say it without passing comment. There was a Red Cross statement about how they are taking blood donations from vaccinated individuals, but nobody should be concerned because the vaccine doesn't enter the bloodstream. So it's not a concern when it comes to blood donations, things like that. It was interesting how that kind of contrasts with what we're being told about lipid nanoparticles in this article about how they
in the bloodstream.
Specifically are the things that bring the vaccine into the bloodstream.
Yeah.
I don't know. Interesting. I might have to look into that a little bit more.
Yeah. So CRISPR, more proof that it can edit you. And I think they're planning to do that to a large population. I feel like we've talked about this at the time, but COVID was the big shake everything up and then let things settle down in new places. And, genetics is definitely one of those things, because prior to COVID, first off, the public conversation about genetics wasn't as fervent. It was out there, but it wasn't like everyone was talking about the craziness of editing your DNA and stuff like that. But then it happened. And then now there's a big divide about what to do. So theeconomist.com also had this article here. After fallow decades, neuroscience is undergoing a renaissance.
Ooh.
Basil. The Economist, of course, the outlet that I believe at one point was owned by the Rockefellers, I'm going to say. Could be wrong about the detail. It might have been the Rothschilds. And it says this: when minds change, so do brains. And the opposite is also true. Things which change brains and central nervous systems, or the behavior of specific types of neurons and supporting cells within those structures, can also change minds for better or worse. When brains age or are damaged or are diverted with recreational drugs, minds alter too. Sometimes entire personalities shift. This means that drugs and other treatments that target neurons can be used to address both physical diseases, neural degeneration, for example, and mental ones. Okay, The Economist saying targeting neurons in your brain can change everything.
It's kind of an interesting, mind over matter type of thing, but in the scientific way, not in the woo-woo way.
It's we have the tools, we can monitor the actual pixels of those changes. Yeah. 100 years ago, a single discipline of neuropsychiatry dominated the study and care of brain dysfunction. A schism emerged starting in the 1930s. Today, the neurology department that deal with organic dysfunction of the nervous system and the psychiatry department, which treat human minds, remain apart. Many people believe that a merger of the two is long overdue. Hey, that rhymes. This becomes more important as the biological ties to mental disorders such as depression and anxiety become apparent, as thoughts and feelings, and thus the way the brain has been wired, have a role to play within the brain. They too play a role in disease.
Interesting.
This is all the woke stuff. Doesn't that make perfect sense now? Why they politicize that whole thing? Feelings, facts over feelings, the two sides.
It's also got an interesting combination of faith healing too. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's like a sciencey version of if you believe, you'll get your miracle and get healed or something. Yeah.
The science informing both fields is at the same time advanced and also quite primitive. The brain is so complex that scientific understanding of it can seem decades behind than that of other organs. Okay. As well as its billions of neurons, the brain boasts similar numbers of non-neural cells known as glia, which provide the insulation to keep neural currents separate, as well as the nutrients needed for neurons to generate those currents at the immune response and waste disposal services the brain needs to stay healthy. Glial cells even help prune away the unwanted connections in the brain during development. The story of
those glial cells, that's interesting. I don't know if you remember this, Gons, but long ago, what are they called? They're called the star cells. Isn't glial have something to do with stars?
Yeah, they look like the shape of stars.
Yeah. And there was some interesting connections to some trippy stuff. They were doing some pineal glands with the glial cells, and it's our connection to the whatever.
It's like the layers of the membrane in the brain. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the astrocyte, known collectively as the astroglia, star-shaped glial cells in the brain and spinal cord. So yeah, that was the connection. Neurons talk to each other across gaps called synapses, places where a signal that has been transmitted electronically along the body of one cell is translated into a chemical message for transmission into the next one. More than 100 of these neurotransmitters have been discovered so far, but although some, such as serotonin and dopamine, have become household names, there's still much work to be done to understand how they and their more obscure classmates operate. In the second half of the 20th century, doctors discovered a range of psychiatric drugs. It gets into some stuff here. Time to change your mind. This was interesting. New approaches. So we're talking about the new approaches. We know about the history. We've been talking about it for a long time. New approaches include neuroimmunology, which targets the immune cells of the brain. Gene therapy, which delivers working genes for those that are broken. And a revived interest in psychedelics. Neuromodulation, and precision medicines based around genetic or molecular pathways. Yeah. Other novel approaches such as gene editing, stem cell transplants, and RNA therapies could also lead to new treatments, as could studies of recreational drugs which try to gain insight and therapeutic approaches from their manifestly mind-altering power.
That is, they are specifically referring to the sort of previously shunned idea, but I'm talking about by the mainstream. What they're referring to there is like ayahuasca and mushrooms and psychedelics having some sort of healing property in the brain. And, this has been, in the case of ayahuasca, that's been sort of the point of it for thousands of years or whatever. All the indigenous people in their ayahuasca ceremonies, it was considered that it has actual healing properties. It's a healing thing. And that kind of made it into the psychedelic culture where mushrooms and ayahuasca and other entheogens, as they're called now, are actually, healing medicines. And here we are in The Economist, one of the most straightforward, kind of boring facts, fact of the matter publications, being like, oh yeah, this is the state of neuroimmunology, is psychedelics can heal your brain and thus heal you from diseases. It's a very interesting manifestation of what Carl Teichrib called the age of re-enchantment. Yeah. Using science to re-enchant the things that were formerly mystical. Yeah. The Economist on the Harvard media list, ownership list, says The Economist Newspaper Limited, the parent company of the Economist Group, is a private company and none of its shares are listed. Love it. That's good. Even better. Anonymous investors behind The Economist here. Psychiatry is undergoing a rethink with efforts to improve classification and diagnosis of disease and through closer ties to neurobiology. Investors, biotech firms, and forward-thinking pharma companies are showing renewed interest in neuroscience. Drug pipelines are filling up. Oh, good. Yeah. Got to get those drug pipelines filled up. Interesting. Biotech firms. Again, referring straight back to Biden's executive order, making biotechnology one of the top priorities. Oh, of the government. It just makes sense. That's why he said this. We beat pharma this year. We beat pharma this year. We beat pharma into submission. We beat them by the bioeconomy. We beat them by giving them all our money. That's how we destroy them. We give them all the money. That follows a lot of the Biden logic, honestly. Yeah, it does. Is that good? You got that wrapped up? Because I got one that kind of ties into this. Sure. Yeah. Go for it. Oh, you're going to love it. Let's head on over to MIT.edu. Okay. The official Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Okay. That's right. Massachusetts Institute of Technology. They have this fun little deal here. Cell Rover. This was almost the Flippy update, by the way. Cell Rover exploring and augmenting the inner world of the cell. Beep, bop, boop, boop, boop. And the headline image here has sort of a computery looking model of a cell with what looks to be like a satellite floating around inside
Satellite
of it.
on wheels, though. It's got wheels on it.
Oh, it's even cooler. Yeah. It's like a Mars rover. Actually, I won't get into it. Researchers at the MIT Media Lab have designed a miniature antenna that can operate wirelessly inside of a living cell, opening up possibilities in medical diagnostics and treatment and other scientific processes because of the antenna's potential for monitoring and even directing cellular activity in real time.
Oh, good. Just little cell conductors and surveillors.
Monitoring and even directing cellular activity. They're talking about nanobots that literally can take over your cell. Here's a quote. "The most exciting aspect of this research is we are able to create cyborgs."
Are you ready to become cyborg?
"At a cellular scale." They're not even talking about turning the human into a cyborg. They're talking about turning individual cells of your body into individual cyborgs that can be controlled by machines, says Deblina Sarkar, assistant professor and AT&T career development chair.
Gee.
You
keep reading. The title keeps going.
Y'all want AT&T involved in your cyborg cells? The MIT Media Lab and head of the Nano Cybernetic Biotrek Lab. Love it. Quote, we are able, she says, to fuse the versatility of information technology at the level of cells, the building blocks of biology.
Oh, that's why they want to build back better. It makes sense. They want to build us back better as cybernetic symbiotes.
Build
already sort of a cybernetic symbiote. Neural nets are taking over from regular programming. So you are connected.
A paper describing the research was published today in the journal Nature Communications. The technology, named Cell Rover by the researchers, represents the first demonstration of an antenna that can operate inside a cell and is compatible with 3D biological systems. Typical bioelectronic interfaces, Sarkar says, are millimeters or even centimeters in size and are not only highly invasive, but also fail to provide the resolution needed to interact with single cells wirelessly, especially considering that changes to even one cell can affect a whole organism. The antenna developed by Sarkar's team is much smaller than a cell. In fact, in the team's research with eyesight cells, the antenna represented less than 0.05% of the cell volume, putting it well below a size that would intrude upon and damage the cell. That is an extraordinarily small machine. Finding a way to build an antenna of that size to work inside a cell was a key challenge. And it goes on and on. It gets quite dense about the sort of technicality of it. One of the interesting parts about it was they said, with electromagnetic communication, wireless communication in its traditional form, electromagnetic waves can really cause a lot of damage to cells. And you're like, wait. We've just been told for years that 5G is
5G
safe
doesn't do anything. It's safe.
Wi-Fi isn't a problem. It's all. And here they're just like, any electromagnetic wave is pretty damaging to a cell. Okay, well, and so what they did was convert the electromagnetic signals into
acoustic waves.
Acoustic waves. Yeah, so it's all done through magnetic acoustic waves, which is interesting when you consider, the acoustic weaponry that we've talked about, how music,
the acoustic version's always more mellow, man. That's what they figured out.
How sound waves and things like that can affect the body and stuff like that. It's just interesting connections all over the place. But instead of using electromagnetic waves, they use sort of magnetoacoustic waves. So they're basically little speakers, tiny little cell speakers that go inside your body and can control cells. And of course, they give the usual breakdown of how this is going to cure everything and how this is, going to cure cancer bring us into a
degenerative diseases.
Yeah, a new age of being able to control our biology. And, we'll just be living some sort of futuristic forever lives because of the little nanobots that we put into our cells. But there you go. Cell Rover. Folks, it's good for you. Don't question it. Just take your nanobots, sit down, and stop complaining.
Yeah, and to the point of that we've repeated before, Dr. Hugo de Garis, who we talked to many years ago, he was talking about how if there are aliens, they go inward, like they go into the miniature, and all you can see all the propaganda. It says here, the researchers named their intracellular antenna technology Cell Rover to invoke like that of a Mars rover, its mission to explore a new frontier.
Interesting, as above, so below comparison there. Here's a quote that we can kind of sums it up there for us. Quote, "This opens up unprecedented opportunities for extremely precise diagnostics, therapeutics, and drug discovery, as well as creating a new direction at intersection between biology and electronic devices."
Oh,
I ask you once again, folks, are you ready to become cyborg?
You thought that was a joke.
Are you ready to become cyborg?
Real serious question.
Uh-huh. All right. You got anything before we thank some people?
Yeah. So real quick, there was a video here that was published on Jason Calacanis's Twitter, which is blue check mark. So that's all we need to know. And I guess it's an example of Apple AR, that's augmented reality. And, the comment is like, it's going to change everything. And it's got this sort of, it's inside of a room. You see a holographic, because augmented reality, you kind of have like things in front of you that aren't there. There's a whole body, and you can kind of flip between the epidermis and the muscle layer and the bone layer, and move organs around, and just the whole shebang, where you can really meticulously look at every part of your body and isolate it and examine it and all this kind of stuff. And to the stories that we've just read, really the mapping of your body to very precise levels. The tools, this is like the utility of that kind of technology. And, it probably costs a lot of money to get your body scanned to that level. But also, why would you want your body scanned to that level? I mean,
was this actually of his body, or is it just like a body?
I don't know. I think it's just a body. This is like an example. But he's making the point that it's going to change everything. Apple's AR, because Apple's been very quiet with the whole AR and VR and that whole front. So when they come out with stuff, I'm sure it's going to be revolutionary.
Yeah, they have been in what tech bros love to call monk mode.
Yeah, monk mode.
They don't tell you exactly what they're working on, but oh my gosh, it'll change your life.
Well, maybe that's why they keep silencing us, because we keep telling people about it.
We keep giving away the secrets.
Yeah,
right.